I, 26FF, stood at my father's funeral, the air thick with grief and the scent of lilies. The small church was packed with people who had known and loved him. My older brother, Mark, 32M, who had barely shown his face in the past 5 years, stepped up to the podium. I expected a eulogy, maybe some shared memories of better times. Instead, he cleared his throat and delivered words that turned my blood to ice. Before we conclude today's service, I have an announcement. The family home has been sold. The new owners take possession tomorrow. His eyes found mine across the room. You have 24 hours to get out. The gasps from the mourners echoed my own shock. My legs felt like water. This had to be some cruel joke, some nightmare I would wake from. After the service, I pushed through the crowd to confront Mark in the parking lot. How could you do this? Today of all days? How could you sell Dad's house? Mark's face wore a smug expression that made my stomach turn. Dad left me everything in his will. He signed it a month ago. I needed the money, and the deal is done. He pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. See for yourself. The house, the accounts, everything. All mine. He showed no trace of remorse, not even the decency to look ashamed. 24 hours, Mark repeated, his voice cold and businesslike. And be out by tomorrow afternoon, or the new owners will have you removed by the sheriff. You can take your clothes and personal items. Everything else stays. The furniture, the appliances, even Dad's books. They bought it all. He turned to walk away, then paused. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just pack and go. The finality in his voice left no room for argument. He had planned this perfectly, striking when I was at my weakest. A wave of despair crashed over me as I watched him drive away. That house was my entire world, the last piece of my father I had left. Every room held memories. Every corner told a story. I felt utterly defeated, standing alone in that empty parking lot. Mark had always been selfish, putting himself first in every situation, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. As I drove back to the house, one thought kept running through my mind. Mark thought he had won. He thought he had planned everything perfectly. But he forgot one thing. Our father knew exactly what kind of man his son was. Back at the house, the silence was deafening. The 24-hour countdown had begun. I started packing through tears, each item I touched bringing fresh pain. Dad's favorite coffee mug. The photo from my college graduation where his smile was so proud. The old chess set we played with every Sunday. My hands shook as I wrapped these precious memories in newspaper. How could Mark do this? How could he be so heartless? I felt completely powerless, like a leaf caught in a hurricane. My brother held all the cards, and he knew it. As I packed, memories flooded back. For 3 years, I had been Dad's caregiver. When the cancer diagnosis came, I moved back home without hesitation. I cooked his meals, managed his medications, drove him to endless appointments. I held his hand through the chemotherapy sessions that left him weak and sick. I read to him when he couldn't sleep. Mark visited exactly twice a year, usually around holidays. His phone calls were brief and always ended the same way. So, what do you think the house is worth now? Dad would get this sad, disappointed look after those calls, like he was mourning a son who was still alive. While clearing out Dad's desk, searching for important papers I might need, my hand found an old business card tucked behind a drawer. Henderson and Associates. Estate planning. I remembered Dad mentioning Mr. Henderson once or twice, calling him a good man who helps you prepare for the worst. The card was worn, like it had been handled many times. On a desperate impulse, I dialed the number. It was in the past 8 in the evening. No one would answer. But I had to try. I had nothing left to lose. Henderson here, a calm voice answered on the third ring. The words tumbled out of me in a rush. I explained everything about Mark, the will, the 24-hour deadline. My voice cracked as I described being thrown out of my childhood home. The lawyer listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that stopped my heart. Do not leave that house. Your brother has no legal authority to sell it. None whatsoever. Your father was a very wise man, Mr. Henderson continued. He anticipated this exact scenario. He knew what your brother might try. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning at 10. Bring any papers your brother showed you, and listen carefully. Whatever you do not sign anything your brother gives you. Not a single document. Your father made sure you would be protected, but you must trust the process. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe Mark hadn't won, after all. The next morning came too quickly. At exactly 10:15, Mark's car pulled into the driveway. He wasn't alone. 2 large men got out with him. These gentlemen are from the moving company, Mark announced. The new owners hired them to clear the house. Time's up, sis. You need to leave. Now. I stood my ground on the front porch. I'm not going anywhere. I spoke to a lawyer. Mark actually laughed, a harsh sound that reminded me why I had avoided him for so long. A lawyer? What's some ambulance chaser going to do? I have Dad's will right here. It's legal and binding. Now move, or these men will move you. Before the movers could take a step, another car pulled up. An older gentleman in a neat gray suit stepped out, carrying a leather briefcase. Good morning. I'm Mr. Henderson, executor of your father's estate. He looked at the movers. Gentlemen, you may want to wait in your truck. This won't take long. Mark waved his copy of the will in the air. I don't care who you are. This will give me everything. The house is already sold. Mr. Henderson studied the paper for a moment, then shook his head. This document is a forgery, Mark. Quite a poor one. Your father's actual signature looks nothing like this. More importantly, Mr. Henderson continued, opening his briefcase, this house was never yours to sell. 5 years ago, your father established an irrevocable trust. The house was placed in that trust, with your sister named as the sole beneficiary and trustee upon his passing. The house became hers the moment your father died. You cannot sell what you never owned. Any contract you signed with these supposed buyers is void. The movers were already backing toward their truck. Mark's face had gone white. That's impossible. Dad wouldn't do that to me. I'm his son. I'm the oldest. Mr. Henderson pulled out another document, this one with multiple official seals and notary stamps. This is your father's actual last will and testament, properly witnessed and filed with the court. He began to read. To my son Mark, who has shown neither love nor loyalty to this family, who borrowed money he never repaid, who saw me not as a father but as a future inheritance, I leave nothing. Every loan, every cash advance, every debt he owes me is hereby documented and must be repaid to my estate. Mark's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. The total amount, Mr. Henderson continued, comes to $53,000. Your father kept meticulous records. Every loan, every broken promise to repay, every excuse. Since you have been disinherited from all other assets, the trust will place a lien on your personal property. Your wages will be garnished, your tax returns seized. Every penny you owe will be collected and given to the trust, which your sister now controls completely. The irony was perfect. Mark hadn't just failed to steal the house. He had walked into a trap that would take years to escape. Mark's face went from white to red, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might take a swing at the lawyer. Then he turned to me, his eyes full of rage. You knew about this. You and Dad planned this together. I shook my head. I knew nothing. But Dad knew you, Mark. He knew exactly what you would try to do. Mark stood there for another moment, trembling with fury. The movers had already driven away. Finally, without another word, he got in his car and tore out of the driveway, tires squealing against the pavement. Mr. Henderson handed me a folder full of documents. The house is yours, free and clear. The locks should be changed today. Your brother may try to return. He smiled, the first warm expression I had seen in days. Your father loved you very much. He wanted to make sure you would always have a home. He also wanted to ensure that your brother's greed would be his own downfall. I'd say he succeeded on both counts. As the lawyer drove away, I stood on the porch of my home, not my father's home anymore. My home, the home he had protected for me even after death. That afternoon, a locksmith came and changed every lock. Mark would never set foot in this house again. I walked through each room, no longer packing, but unpacking. This was where I belonged. This was what Dad wanted. The house felt warm again, filled with his presence and his love. My brother's greed had cost him everything. He had tried to leave me with nothing, and ended up with less than nothing himself. The revenge was complete, served cold at a funeral and perfected in a lawyer's briefcase. I would cherish this house and honor my father's memory. And somewhere, I knew Dad was smiling. The weeks that followed brought a peace I hadn't felt in years. Mark tried calling several times, leaving angry voicemails about contesting the will. Mr. Henderson assured me he had no case. The trust was ironclad, created when Dad was completely sound of mind and properly witnessed. Mark then tried emotional manipulation, claiming we were family and should work things out. I didn't return those calls either. He had shown me exactly what family meant to him when he tried to throw me out of my home 24 hours after our father's funeral. The best part came a month later. Mr. Henderson called to inform me that the first garnishment from Mark's wages had been processed. "Your brother has been quite upset," he said with professional detachment. "He's tried to claim financial hardship, but the court wasn't sympathetic. Apparently, judges don't look kindly on people who try to make their sisters homeless through forged documents." Every month, a check would come to the trust, slowly repaying what Mark had taken from Dad over the years. It would take him a decade to pay it all back, a decade of being reminded of his greed and cruelty. I kept Dad's office exactly as he left it, except for one addition. I framed the letter he had written to Mr. Henderson, explaining his wishes. In it, he wrote about his love for me and his sadness about what Mark had become. "My daughter has shown me what family truly means," he wrote. "She sacrificed her own life to care for mine. My son has shown me that blood alone doesn't make family. He is a stranger who shares my name." The letter ended with his hope that I would find happiness in the house and that Mark would perhaps learn something from his choices. Some nights I sat in Dad's chair and felt his presence strongly. The house was filled with him. From his books on the shelves to his tools in the garage, Mark had wanted to sell all of this to strangers to turn our father's life into cash. Instead, he got nothing but debt and the knowledge that Dad had seen through him completely. There was poetic justice in that. The son who called only to ask about property values got no property. The daughter who asked for nothing got everything. Dad had orchestrated the perfect response to betrayal. Friends and family who heard the story were shocked by Mark's actions, but not surprised by the outcome. "Your father always was 10 steps ahead," my aunt said. "He knew how to protect what mattered. What mattered was this house and the memories it held. What mattered was knowing that love and loyalty meant more than blood and birth order." Mark learned that lesson too late. By the time he understood what he had lost, it was gone forever. His greed had been his downfall, exactly as Dad had predicted. I renovated the house slowly, making it mine, while keeping Dad's spirit alive in every room. The garden he loved still blooms every spring. His workshop remains ready for projects. But now, it also has my touches, my colors, my life growing within these walls. This house is no longer just about the past. It's about the future Dad secured for me. Every mortgage-free month is a gift from him. Every peaceful morning in the kitchen where we shared so many conversations is a blessing he protected. Mark tried to steal all of this. Instead, he stole only his own future, trading his inheritance for quick cash he never actually got. The last time I saw Mark was at the grocery store 6 months later. He looked older, worn down. He started to approach me, then stopped when he saw my expression. There was nothing to say. He had made his choice at Dad's funeral, and I had made mine every day for 3 years before that. He turned and walked away, and I continued shopping for dinner in the house that would always be my home. The house where love triumphed over greed. The house where Dad's wisdom protected me, even from beyond the grave. The house that Mark would spend the next decade paying for, but would never enter again.